My name is Daniel Burke. I'm American. About 8 years ago, I ended up here, in the middle of Russia, in a cold little town called Zemnaya Polyana. I work as a janitor at Hotel Seryy Volk. It means Grey Wolf. The building is old, built long ago in an isolated area near the mountains. In winter, snow covers everything. Almost no one comes or goes. The roads freeze. The town feels like it disappears. But the hotel never closes. It does get almost empty, yes, but there's always one or two guests. And in that silence, strange things happen. I took the job without thinking much. I'd lost my marriage. I was tired of life in the US. I wanted silence, a fresh start. And here, I thought it would be just that, fixing a faucet, changing a light bulb, checking if the boiler hadn't frozen over. But I quickly realized this hotel wasn't just wood, brick, and snow. It felt alive. Sometimes I'd walk down a hallway and feel like someone had just been there. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps and there'd be no one. Sometimes I'd blink and swear the mirror took a second too long to show my reflection. At first, I thought it was fatigue, isolation. Then I found the records. Behind the old laundry room, there's a cabinet full of dusty boxes. Inside, I found letters, notebook scraps, notes, all written by people who stayed here and never left. Their names are still in the system, but there's no checkout date. They never checked out. When I asked the front desk clerk, she just said, "Some people choose to stay." But the way she said it, it didn't sound like a choice. I'm telling this because I saw it happen with my own eyes. But before we get started, just make sure you're already subscribed to the channel. I'll be sharing stories like this every week. Now back to the guests. His name was Tomas Herrera, a professor from Argentina. Came to write a book about Russian architecture. Said he needed silence. Checked into room 217. At first, everything was normal. Tomas was polite, observant, always smiling, taking notes, sipping strong coffee, and writing for hours. Until one day he vanished. The maid knocked on his door. No answer. She called me. I used the master key. When we entered, the room was perfectly tidy. Laptop on, luggage packed, bed made. But he wasn't there. And the windows locked from the inside. They called the police. Searched the woods. Checked every inch. Nothing. No tracks. No clues. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air. Days later, I went back to the room to help pack up his things. That's when I found a folded note under the lamp. No name. No date. It was his handwriting. But the paper was cold, like it had been there much longer than it should. It said simply, "Someone's crying inside the wall. And when the lights go out, he appears." Since then, no one slept in room 217. They say it's closed for renovation. But no one ever ordered repairs. And even with the door locked, sometimes I hear footsteps inside. Slow, heavy, as if the room is breathing on its own. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But now, I'm not so sure anymore. Should I go on? Because this was only the beginning. Room 217 was the first one that made me question everything. But it didn't take long for another one to reveal itself. It was the following winter. A guest named Emma Halvorsen from Norway checked in alone to room 308. She was a nature photographer, very calm, very polite. She wanted to capture the snow-covered forest and said the hotel looked perfect for the job. For the first 2 days, she barely came out. Stayed in the room, only went out to photograph nearby, and came back before dark. On the third day, she called me because the bathroom mirror was stained. I went up with cleaning supplies, knocked on the door. She opened it herself. Looked a bit pale. "There's something strange about the mirror," she said. "The stain looks like a face, but it's not mine." I figured it was just a reflection, some trick of the light. I went to the bathroom, turned on the light, and saw it. It wasn't a normal stain. It really did have the shape of a face. Thin, long, with scar-like marks where the eyes should be. But the worst part wasn't that. The mirror was clean on the outside. The mark was on the inside of the glass. I ran my hand over it, tapped it, rubbed it. Nothing changed. When I turned to tell her that, she was standing behind me. Not speaking, just staring. But not at me. She was staring at the mirror. The next day, she asked me for black tape. Said she was going to cover it. When I asked why, she said, because it started looking back at me. That night, I woke up to a strange sound coming from the hallway. My rooms are on the ground floor, but the noise came from upstairs. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, repeated knocks, like someone trying to gently wake another. I went up quietly. When I reached her floor, there was no one in the hallway. But the knocking continued. Knock, knock, knock. It was coming from inside room 308. I called out. No answer. But the light was on inside. I could see it under the door. I was about to knock again when the sound stopped, and then I heard a whisper. It was her voice. I told him to stop copying me, but he won't. The next day, she didn't come to breakfast, didn't leave the room, didn't answer the phone. I went up with the front desk clerk. She unlocked the door with the spare key. Inside, Emma was sitting on the bed, back turned, completely still. The bathroom mirror was covered with black tape. I called her name. Twice. She didn't answer. But when I got closer, she turned to look at me. And that's when I understood. It wasn't her. The face was the same one I saw in the mirror before. Long, pale, sunken eyes, but empty, expressionless, like a mask with flesh behind it. The clerk screamed. I grabbed her and we ran. When the police arrived, no one was there. The bed was made, the mirror clean. Later, we checked the hallway cameras, and what we saw was worse. During the night, for 2 full hours, the door to room 308 opened and closed on its own. 16 times. Always at 3:03 a.m. Always with a faint muffled laugh, as if someone inside the mirror was having a great time. I tried to forget, told myself it was a breakdown, a trick of the mind, but then I saw something in her file. Emma Halvorsen never checked out, and the mirror in room 308, it's been replaced 3 times since then. But every night, around 3 a.m., someone always wipes the same spot on the glass from the inside. Still there? Because whatever lives in this hotel hasn't finished showing its face. Not every guest who vanished disappeared all at once. Some of them faded away slowly, like the couple in room 703. They arrived on a Thursday night in the middle of a snowstorm. Her name was Lays from Brazil. His was Nathan from the U.S. Young, traveling through Russia on a winter backpacking trip. They arrived laughing, excited. Asked if the hotel had a fireplace. Said they wanted a few days of rest. We placed them on the 7th floor. That floor has always felt different to me. Heavier. The hallways are narrower. The windows seem smaller. And even with all the lights on, you get the feeling someone is standing behind you. On the first night, I got a phone call. It was Nathan. There's someone walking around upstairs, he said. I explained the hotel only has 7 floors. There's no one above them. Silence on the line. Then he said, then I guess someone's on the roof. And hung up. On the second night, someone knocked on the door of my room on the ground floor. It was Lays. Pale. Shaking. She said she'd heard a child crying inside the closet. I went up to the room with her. Nathan was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the closet door. I already checked, but, he said, without looking at me, I still hear it. I opened the closet. Nothing. But the air inside, it smelled like wet dust and spoiled milk. I checked everything, pretended to stay calm, told them sometimes the pipes creak in the cold, and sounds can travel strangely. They nodded, went back to bed, but as I left, I noticed the shadows cast by the hallway lamps didn't move when I walked past them. On the 3rd night, they didn't come to dinner. I knocked on their door at 9 p.m. Nothing. At 11, I left a note. The next morning, they showed up at breakfast. But something had changed. Lays looked like she hadn't slept. Nathan stared at the floor, like something was hiding beneath the tiles. Are you two okay? I asked. Lays answered softly. The clock stopped. My phone won't show the right time anymore. And the bathroom mirror, it shows us sleeping, even when we're awake. That night, I went to check their room. Said I needed to inspect the heating system. They let me in. Everything seemed normal. Until I saw it. In the carpet, right in the center of the room, small wet footprints. Barefoot. It wasn't melted snow. It was mud. Red. Warm. I asked if someone had been in the room. Nathan replied, no one comes in. But someone lives inside the wall. The next day they left. Checked out. Took a taxi to the train station. Or so they said. But that same night, I got another call. From the front desk. There's a couple asking for the key to room 703. I went down, walked to the room, and when I got there, they were standing in front of the door. Lays was smiling. So was Nathan. But something was wrong. Their eyes were open too wide. Their feet were bare, and their shoulders were wet, as if they had walked through snow, without clothes, without cold. "Can we go in?" she asked. I told them the room was out of service. "But we're already inside," Nathan said, and both of them vanished. Just like that, like smoke. Since then, no one stays on the 7th floor. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, the door to room 703 knocks softly. 3 times. And if you get close, you can hear a child laughing from inside the closet. Should I keep going? Because after the next few stories, you may never feel safe in a hotel again. The hotel is big, but over time, you learn every corner of it. Every door that creaks. Every window that won't quite close right. I knew all of it. At least, I thought I did. It all started with a sound. A knock. Dry. Repeated. Thump. 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 Like someone pounding on a door with a closed fist. But not a knock to get in. A knock to get out. It happened 3 nights in a row. Always at 4:44 in the morning. Always in the basement. I went down with a flashlight. The hallway down there is long, cold, and smells like damp fabric and old paint. There's a cabinet with old bed linens, cleaning boxes, broken equipment. And at the far end of the hallway, there's a wall with an old gas valve nobody uses anymore. But that night, the wall felt closer. I can't explain it. It was like the hallway had shrunk. Like the concrete was breathing slowly. I touched the wall. Cold. But when I pressed my ear to it, I heard whispers. Then slowly a crack formed, down near the floor. I pulled at a piece of plywood that seemed loose. Behind it, a door. Low. No handle. Painted the same exact color as the wall. Like someone wanted it hidden. I got my tools. Undid the rusty latch. The door groaned, like it hadn't been opened in decades. Inside, a small room. No lights. Dust in the air. And a smell different. It wasn't mold. It wasn't rot. It was like all the sadness in the world had been locked away in that space. The walls were rough stone. The ceiling low. There was a chair in the corner. A rope on the floor. And scratch marks in the concrete, like someone had clawed at it, trying to escape. But the worst part was what was on the walls. Drawings. Done in charcoal, and something darker. Symbols. Words and languages I didn't recognize. And in the center of the main wall, a poorly drawn circle with a face inside it. No eyes. No mouth. Just a black hole in the middle. As if it was staring at me, even though it wasn't moving. I ran. Closed the door. Shoved the cabinet back in front of it. The next day, I searched the hotel blueprints. I found 4 different versions, all drawn in different decades. None of them showed that room. I asked the manager. He smiled. There are places that were never meant to be on any blueprint. Why? I asked. Because sometimes the hotel builds on its own, when it needs to store something. Since then, I don't go down there alone. But every so often, even in the still of night, I hear wood dragging across the basement floor. And a knock. Slow. Heavy. Thump. 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 Like something inside is still waiting to get out. Should I go on? Because now, the hotel has started building things even it doesn't understand. I used to like silence. Always did. The world's noise wore me down. Too much talking, loud music, a city that never slept. Here at the hotel, surrounded by ice, I thought I'd found what I needed. Pure, absolute silence. But that's when I learned that silence has a sound. And it speaks to me. It started with the front desk radio. An old one. Short wave. We only used it to catch city broadcasts or talk to the main office. One night, after checking the 3rd floor's plumbing, I walked into the lobby to write my report. The hotel was calm. Just 2 guests sleeping. Everything peaceful. But the radio turned on by itself. The red light came on. The dial slowly turned. And then came a voice. "Daniel, are you still there?" I choked on my own breath. The voice was low, raspy, like it came from underground. But that wasn't the worst part. It was my voice. Slower. More tired. Like me years from now. I ran to the radio. Turned it off. Pulled the plug out of the socket. But the light stayed on. The next night, I heard it again. This time from the hallway radio in the back wing. I didn't even know that one worked. The voice came again. You should have left when it was just curiosity. I looked around. No one. I tapped the radio, turned it off. But the voice, it kept going. A different one this time. A woman. Crying. Why did he leave me here? I just wanted to go home. And then, Daniel, help me please. Get me out of here. Soon, I was hearing voices everywhere. In my bathroom. By the boiler. Even out in the snow while I cleared the front entrance. They came from beneath my feet. From the pipes. From the mirrors. From the mattresses. One of them whispered, "Remember your father in the bathtub?" He heard them too, but he never told anyone. My father died over 20 years ago. No one here knew that. No one knew he drowned in a bathtub, or that I was the one who found him. That night, I threw up in the hallway. I started sleeping with headphones, or at least trying to, because now, even in dreams, the voices find me. Daniel, why do you think everyone else leaves but you? The hotel chooses who stays, and it chose you. It won't be long now. One night, I decided to confront them. I went to the front desk, turned the radio on. "Who's there?" I asked, staring into nothing. Silence. Then a click, and then a chorus of whispers. Many voices at once, all saying the same name. Daniel. 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 But the worst part was when the security cassette rewound itself, and recorded my voice saying, "I've been here too long already." But I never said that. Not out loud. Since then, I avoid the radios. But they turn on anyway. And now, the sound doesn't just come from them. It comes from the walls. From the carpet. From the plants. From the wood. One day, I sat on the bed. Exhausted. The voices were quiet. I thought, maybe it's over. Then the light flickered. And I heard it. Clear. Loud. Inside my head. Daniel, you don't even know which one of them is you anymore. And maybe it's true. Because sometimes when I speak, I don't recognize my own voice. I haven't slept in days. Or at least, I don't know if I still sleep. Sometimes I wake up already standing in the hallway. Boots on. Coat zipped up. Flashlight in hand. No memory of picking it up. As if someone had lifted me. Or woken me up from inside. The voices are still here. But now they've changed. Before, they spoke only when I was alone. Now they speak even when people are nearby. The other day, while I was fixing the heater on the second floor, a guest from room 206 came down to me, pale and sweating. "There's someone in the room next to mine," he said. "A woman. She keeps repeating a name, over and over. The name is Daniel." The room next to his was empty. When I opened the door, the bed was made. But there were marks on the pillow, as if someone had just laid there. And the name was written on the mirror, with a finger. Daniel. 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 3 times. I started noticing other things. The wooden floor breathes. Rises and falls like a tired chest. The wall paint drips, even with no heat. And the paintings, they move. Yes, they move. One day, the painting at the end of the hallway showed a frozen lake. The next, that same lake was cracked. And in the center, a figure knelt down. Faceless. Arms raised. Like it was begging for something that would never come. Lights flicker when I walk by, but not when others do. And the clocks. Oh, the clocks. They hate me. Each one shows a different time. And when I try to fix them, they switch back. Like they have a mind of their own. I started writing. In notebooks. On my bedroom walls. Behind the furniture. I write to remember what's real. But yesterday, I found a note I swear I never wrote. It was in my own notebook, between 2 regular entries. It said, "He's not the one trapped here. You are." The handwriting looked like mine, but the paper was yellowed, like it had been there for years. My beard has grown. My nails too. But the mirror doesn't show that. In the mirror, I still look the same. Clean. Calm face. Short hair. But I'm not that person anymore. And when I stare for more than 3 seconds, my reflection starts smiling before I do. One night, the entire hotel went quiet. No voices, no footsteps, no sound of wind brushing the windows, only the sound of my own breathing. And then I heard it, not a voice, a sigh, slow, deep, from above, like the entire hotel had just taken a breath. I ran to the boiler room, but the smell was of burnt flesh. The floor was hot, not warm, hot, and the walls sweating, as if they were alive. I touched the pipes, and for a moment I felt a pulse. Yes, a pulse like a heartbeat. Slow, heavy, wet. Since that night, I'm sure of it, the hotel is feeding on me. Not on my flesh, but on my presence, on my guilt, on my loneliness. It uses the worst parts of me to keep me here. And every guest that vanishes is just another piece it absorbs. Today, I found a new door in the hallway on the 3rd floor. A door that wasn't there before. The doorknob was hot, and behind it, I heard voices. Many, screaming my name. Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. But they weren't screaming for help. They were screaming from longing, as if they'd been waiting for me for a long time. I closed the door, went back to my room, but the path was different. A new mirror, a lamp I never bought, the number on the door, 217, but this isn't my room. Now I'm writing with a shaking hand, the light flickering, and the floor feels like it's breathing again. I want to run, but what if I'm not even here anymore? What if the one walking these halls is no longer me? Because now I understand. This hotel isn't haunted. It is the ghost, and we were just its memory. If you've made it this far, I owe you the truth. And the truth is, the Seryy Volk Hotel was never built. It was born. They say that centuries ago, when these lands were still wild and the cold was seen as a curse from the gods, a group of people was sent here to die. Prisoners, women, children, banished from the world for reasons no one remembers anymore. They built cabins, then barns, then a large wooden structure. And that's when the first screams were heard at night. Screams that didn't come from people. Years passed, and the wood turned to stone. The hotel was renovated, expanded. Generation after generation, a new piece was added, as if something inside kept asking for more space. The official story says it was built by Russian nobles, later sold to European investors. But no photo of the founders survived. No deed of sale. No real record of its grand opening. Only stories. Stories like the ones I've told you. Want to know who the ghosts were? The ones who haunted each of these tales? I'll tell you. Tomás Herrera, the Argentine. He never wanted to write about architecture. In truth, he was a priest, expelled from the church after a mishandled confession. He came here to hide, but the hotel forced him to confess. In room 217, he heard someone crying inside the wall. And when he finally opened it, his scream echoed for 3 minutes. Then silence. Only the note remained. Emma Halvorsen, the photographer. In Norway, she lost her daughter beneath a frozen lake. They say the mirror in room 308 showed her holding her daughter every day. But the child never blinked, and Emma began to smile just the same. She froze from the inside out. Now she wipes the mirror with her hand, from the inside. Lays and Nathan, the backpacking couple. They were running from each other. After a betrayal, they decided to try one last time, in a place far away. But the hotel doesn't forgive liars. In 703, they heard a child crying inside the wardrobe. It was the sound of a child that never existed. Nathan tried to leave, but when he opened the door, it was just a mirror. On the other side, it was him, faceless, and now me. Do you want to know how I died? The truth is, I didn't. Not yet, but I'm not alive either. At least not the way I was. The hotel swallowed me slowly. First my voice, then my mind, then my eyes. Now I am part of it. I walk the halls like I used to, but with no destination. No past. No present. Sometimes I hear someone arriving, and I try to hide. But my shadow no longer follows me. It stays behind, still, as if it has a will of its own. I thought writing this story might be my way out. A way to leave something behind. But the paper I'm using was already here when I arrived. The pen has always been in the drawer. And the handwriting isn't always mine. Maybe someone's written this before. Maybe I'm just repeating it. But if there's one thing you must know, it's this. Hotels keep more than guests. They keep stories, decisions, ghosts. Sometimes you hear a noise in the room next door and think, must be the TV. Sometimes the mirror takes a second too long to reflect you. Sometimes the light flickers when you walk by. You call it normal, old, coincidence. But it's not. They're there. All the ones who couldn't leave. All the ones the hotel found more interesting than the world outside. And if right now, at this very moment, you're in a hotel and you're listening to this, look around. See if the room feels bigger than before. If the bed looks differently made. If the mirror seems a bit dirtier or a little too clean. And if you hear a whisper at night calling your name, don't answer. But if you do, remember me, because one day you'll forget the way back. And the hotel will offer you a key. Your own. Forever. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments. And tell me, have you ever suspected something strange at a hotel you stayed in? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.